What if the largest armored armies in history suddenly met on one battlefield? On one side stands the United States military, deploying over 1.1 million soldiers, advanced tanks, precision weapons, and powerful air support. On the other side stands the Soviet Union, mobilizing more than 11 million troops and thousands of armored vehicles. If these two massive forces collided in a single war, the battlefield would become something the world has never seen before. Across a vast open plain, Soviet armored columns begin moving forward. Thousands of tanks roll across the landscape, followed by endless formations of infantry and armored vehicles. From the air, the advancing army looks like a massive wave of steel stretching across the horizon. Dust rises behind the columns as engines roar across the battlefield. This isn't just an army advancing. It is one of the largest military forces ever assembled, moving directly into combat. American reconnaissance satellites quickly detect the approaching formations. Inside command centers, officers study the incoming images carefully. The scale of the Soviet advance is staggering. Thousands of armored vehicles are moving across multiple directions at once. Within minutes, emergency orders are transmitted across the battlefield. U.S. armored divisions begin moving into defensive positions, while infantry units prepare anti-tank weapons for the coming confrontation. American tanks take positions along elevated ridges overlooking the plains. Infantry soldiers deploy defensive lines between armored units. Recon aircraft circle high above the battlefield, while commanders monitor the advancing Soviet columns. Every soldier understands the situation clearly. The approaching enemy force is enormous. Within moments, the quiet landscape will transform into one of the largest armored clashes ever imagined. Meanwhile, Soviet armored formations continue pushing forward. Tank engines roar as massive attack columns stretch for miles across the plains. Wave after wave of armored vehicles advances toward the American defenses. The ground vibrates beneath the movement of thousands of machines. The Soviet strategy relies on overwhelming numbers and relentless momentum to break through enemy lines and seize control of the battlefield. Then suddenly the battle begins. An American tank fires the first shell across the plains. The round slams into the advancing formation and explodes. Seconds later, the entire defensive line erupts with gunfire. Hundreds of tanks fire simultaneously. Explosions ripple across the battlefield as Soviet vehicles are struck. Several armored machines burst into flames, but the massive columns continue advancing through the chaos. Within seconds, the battlefield becomes a storm of fire and steel. Tank shells streak across the plains in every direction. Massive explosions shake the ground as vehicles on both sides are destroyed. Smoke begins rising from burning armored wrecks scattered across the battlefield. What began as a slow advance has now turned into a massive armored confrontation between two of the most powerful military forces on Earth. Despite the explosions, Soviet forces continue advancing through the battlefield. Tank crews drive forward through smoke and debris without slowing down. Infantry soldiers move behind armored vehicles, while artillery shells impact the ground nearby. Every minute, the fighting grows more intense. Neither army shows any sign of retreat. Instead, both sides continue committing more vehicles and soldiers to the growing conflict. Suddenly, the sky above the battlefield begins to change. American attack helicopters appear from behind the defensive lines. Missiles launch toward the advancing Soviet armor. Several tanks explode as rockets strike their targets. Flames and debris scatter across the plains. But even under heavy aerial attack, Soviet armored columns continue moving forward through the destruction. Now the battlefield is completely consumed by chaos. Tank units clash at close range, while infantry soldiers move between burning vehicles. Explosions echo across the plains as both armies exchange heavy fire. The ground becomes covered with smoke, debris, and destroyed machines. This is no longer just another battle. It has become one of the largest armored clashes the world has ever imagined. Destroyed tanks now litter the battlefield in every direction. Burning wrecks illuminate the horizon through the smoke. Yet even as losses increase, new armored formations continue arriving from both sides. Commanders refuse to withdraw their forces. Each army pushes more vehicles into the fight, determined to gain control of the battlefield regardless of the growing destruction. American armored divisions struggle to maintain their defensive positions. Soviet forces continue advancing in powerful waves across the plains. The battlefield now resembles a graveyard of destroyed vehicles and shattered metal. Massive smoke clouds rise high into the sky. But even with the devastation spreading across the landscape, neither army is willing to surrender control of the battlefield. After hours of brutal fighting, both armies suffer enormous losses. Hundreds of armored vehicles have been destroyed during the battle. Entire units have vanished in the chaos of explosions and gunfire. Yet the conflict continues. Military commanders on both sides begin preparing the next phase of the war, knowing the coming stage may be even more devastating. Then something unexpected appears above the battlefield. At first, only a few aircraft are visible through the smoke. Then dozens more appear across the sky. Within moments, massive fleets of warplanes fill the horizon. The battle is no longer limited to the ground. The next phase of this war is about to begin, and it will take the fight into the sky.